You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Thursday, which, you know what, we named it around here. Now it is always and forever shall be known as Rightside Radio Thankful Thursday. Play it.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and the always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you!
Nice. Well, thank you. I'm thankful for you, JP. Do you know that?
I'm thankful for you.
Well, thank you.
And I'm thankful it's Thursday.
I'm thankful it's Thursday, almost to Friday. We're going to get there.
Because I didn't even realize it was Thursday until you said it was Thankful Thursday. I don't even know what day it was.
You're like beyond hump day. It is almost to the weekend.
Yeah.
All right, listen, we got a great show later on. Hope you guys are having a great day. So coming up on the show today, I'm pretty stoked. So our buddy Scott Buttram, who is the publisher of the Trustful Tribune, who is an avowed conservative, a longtime right-side ruffian, has occasionally been even a guest host on this show. Scott Buttram coming in studio, just going to hang out with us. We're going to talk a little home fries with him, and also The Butters. The Butters is out today. Got a family event, and I don't blame him for that. I mean, your kids are only young once. So he's got a family event right now, and so Buttram is going to sit in for Butters, and we'll have at halfway through hour number 2, Buttram and Lee. That's the Thursday thing. Buttram and Lee today, halfway through hour number 2. And then there's still an old Triple Dipper. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper. 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, I'm talking about some home fries. You know the deal. You look around and you think, everything's in D.C. Everything's about foreign policy and tariffs and whatever. No, it's not. What happens in your backyard sometimes have more impact on what you do and say and get to be a part of than anything else. So we're going to talk about home fries, number 1 on the Triple Dipper. Number 2, President Trump made a big announcement today. He even tweeted out about it first thing in the morning, like at 0:30. But at 10 a.m. today in the Oval Office, he announced the first of a major trade deal. I'll tell you more about it, who it is, and what may be coming afterwards. But number 2 on the Triple Dipper is called, What's the Big Deal? Well, I'll tell you. There's been a very big deal announced today, and he says it's the first of many to come. And then number 3, assuming I can get to it, I didn't get to it yesterday, is the doom loop. The doom loop. I think it's important that we take a look at what happens when a municipality, like one of which we have here in Alabama, a municipality reaches a point where it can no longer consider itself to be actively engaged or growing, or for that matter, retaining businesses. And anyway, there's a cycle called the doom loop. Sounds pretty awesome, sounds pretty ominous. Well, it is. It's when a city's dying. And we'll talk about that as number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump on into today's Right Side Way opening monologue, and I'll just remind you guys that the Right Side Way is brought to you every single day by attorney Stan McDonald. Stan McDonald, a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee in Huntsville. He's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law. He's also a longtime conservative, and I will tell you about Stan McDonald momentarily, but he is the sponsor of the Right Side Way monologue. Okay, so in order to get to my point today, I'm gonna get into a story from when I was a kid, from right here in this listening area. So I was in 3rd grade at Chaffee Elementary in Huntsville, Alabama. And honestly, that was not a real good year for me. I was in the immediate aftermath of my parents' divorce, still figuring out life. And I was what's known as a latchkey kid, which is a term I don't ever hear anymore, to be honest. But basically, I walked to school every day with a house key hanging on a string around my neck like a weird necklace. And then I walked home to my house and I let myself in with my key until my mom got home from work. Strange times indeed. I mean, Mom was great. Dad was still my hero, but life was really different. But my grandfather was one mainstay. And I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house also. My granddad was a retired Army general, and they lived in southeast Huntsville, not far from where we lived. And he had been the post commander at Redstone Arsenal just a few years before that. My granddaddy taught me to fish. He taught me to play horseshoes. He taught me how to treat a gun like it was always loaded. It was kind of life lesson kind of stuff. And he was like a mainstay. And one day, he gave me a couple of things that I found out in his garage, which in my memory, that garage, it was like a giant room filled with all kinds of crazy cool things that any boy would love to get his hands on. I mean, that garage never had a car in it in my entire life. It never had a car in it because it was too full of granddaddy's stuff. There was old fishing tackle. There were parts for his boat. There were tools. There's memorabilia from 30 years of military service that spanned from World War II all the way through Vietnam. My granddaddy was George McBride, and he was a glider rider in World War II, starting with the 82nd Airborne and then with the 18th Airborne Corps. And one day in the garage, while I was poking around in some things that I wasn't supposed to be in, I put my 10-year-old hands on a clock, a small clock. It was very nondescript. It was a small black clock, about the size of a baseball. It was very function over form looking, you know what I mean? It was kind of industrial looking, kind of chunky, had a square metal frame on the front of it surrounding the round glassed-in clock face. And there were 4 holes, one in each corner, like it used to be mounted on something. I realized when I was looking at it that it was hinged so it could actually be opened up, and that's how you wound it. The mechanism to wind it was inside, and I couldn't figure out why that would be. Well, okay, so I was fascinated. So I took it back in the house, back to my granddaddy, and I asked him, I said, why is this old clock out in the garage? Well, he looked at it, and he got kind of thoughtful for a minute, and then he told me the incredible story that during World War II, he had taken that clock out of the dash of a German Messerschmitt fighter plane. How about that? A German Messerschmitt fighter plane. And he had used it for years like a desk clock. It sat on his desk. And then, while we're sitting there talking about it, he gave it to me. Told me to take good care of it. Well, that was a personal treasure. Let me tell you, a little third grade me is loving that. I loved that clock. It was like a symbol of great things, of cool things. My granddaddy had been in the war, and he took that clock from the bad guys, and now it was mine. Well, at some point after that, at school, we actually had a show and tell. So yeah, I took my bad guy clock to school, and I showed everybody. And after that, it sat on my desk where I marveled at it. And other of my friends would look at it and go, that's cool, yeah. Well, being a kid, I couldn't help but fidget with it, right? I mean, I'm third grade. And I'd pick it up and look at it. And then it happened. The teacher was apparently having a bad day. She decided I was not able to handle having the clock with me until the bell rang to walk home with my key around my neck. So she told me she was taking it up because it was too much of a distraction. So over my third grade protest, she took up my World War II bad guy clock and she put it in the teacher's workroom. Well, when I went to get it after school, she told me the rule was that anything that had been taken up like that would be held until the end of the school year. You heard me. The end of the school year. My clock. So a couple of months later, school was out and I went to get my clock. And in one of the most insensitive, callous, and indifferent things I have ever seen, it turns out the clock was gone. But it wasn't just gone. It had been thrown away. As I was told later, it appears that the teachers had been cleaning out the workroom in their rush to get to summer vacation. And in doing so, somebody saw that old clock and nobody could remember what it was from. Just a small, chunky black clock. Why is this in here? I don't know. And they threw it away. They had forgotten that it had value to somebody else. It was in their care. But they didn't care, and they threw it away. And I had to tell my granddaddy about it. And I don't know if he was mad at me or not. He didn't show that he was, but I do know this. I do know he, by God, went down to that school and somebody got an earful from the general. I mean, you think about that. They told the kid to bring his favorite thing to school to show everybody, then they took it away from him, then they cast it aside. Make that make sense. Oh, that's right. You can't make that make sense. Okay, so why am I bringing this story up? Well, because I saw another story today and it triggered that memory, and I'll tell you about it. So early this morning, I was prepping for the show. Townhall.com ran a story that brought this whole thing to mind. Another one of those Biden boondoggles that blows your mind when you think about it. Remember this, Joe Biden, he never led a thing in his entire life. And it was not clear that he was even leading himself toward the ends of his presidency, right? So when Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023, they massacred thousands of innocent civilians. They took hundreds hostage, and the war against Hamas in Gaza has been ongoing ever since. Well, Israel's our ally. They have been for decades. But Joe Biden and his team, they were feckless losers, and they didn't know a thing about what it meant to lead from the front or to take care of your friends. They were always looking for a way on everything, but especially in this case, to appease someone or to please everyone, which meant you're doing nothing meaningful. So Biden announced that he supported Israel, but he was also going to ensure that aid and comfort was given to Hamas. Oh boy. So as part of this fiasco of foreign policy, you may recall that Biden announced in his 2024 State of the Union that he had directed the U.S. military to begin building a floating pier on the coast of the Red Sea. A floating pier. It's a real thing. It's called the JLOTS, the Joint Logistics Over-the-Shore Pier. The JLOTS. It's a floating pier which had not been used much, and it was really not made for this environment, to be honest. It involved huge floating sections of steel being linked together to make a pier with a causeway. It's a cool idea if you're working on calm waters. If you've ever read the Bible, you know the Red Sea is anything but calm. At a cost of $230 million, the floating pier was laboriously assembled in the waves off the Gaza shoreline. And soon after getting it largely in place, and just as it was preparing to really go operational, rough weather broke away 4 of the support boats that kept it working, and they were beached and put out of commission. Later that same week, a major storm hit the area, and the Pentagon confirmed that the causeway portion of the floating pier had been damaged. Much of it had broken off. The Israeli Navy, who was at war with Hamas, had to assist the U.S. in getting the portions back in place. At one point, Hamas militants mortared the installation. Aid trucks tried getting aid across the pier, but it was believed that Hamas was intercepting the aid because, after all, it was a war zone, and, you know, bad guys got to eat too, right? That whole freaking thing, that $230 million pier, was operational for only 20 days. But more importantly is what we just learned. There was a major human toll that they didn't tell you about, because a new report just came out that shows that not only did we spend massive amounts of U.S. dollars on a reckless endeavor, but that 62 American service members were injured during the whole debacle, one of whom, Sergeant Quindarius Stanley. He died 6 months later while under long-term care for injuries he sustained while building the 20-day, $230 million pier to feed our enemies. And then the Biden administration quietly looked the other way and forgot about it. They just pretended it never happened. They washed their hands of all of it and threw it away like it meant nothing. $230 million in the blood of U.S. service members, and they cast it all aside like some kind of trashy little clock that somebody found in the corner of a teacher's workroom. That, my friends, is the bigger story. That, my friends, is the fact that governments do spend money, sure, but what is awful is when government becomes indifferent and callous and disorderly and insensitive. And that story of the Gaza JLOTS pier is like a giant version of my clock story. They told the folks to send their money. They told the folks to send their young men and their young women. And when we did, they took them and they used them in a way that had never been considered, and they wasted the opportunity, and then they cast it aside because they forgot what they really had. That's why things like DOGE right now are so important. That's why it's necessary that we not only put a stop to the reckless use of our greatest assets, our time, our treasure, our kids, and at the very least, we have to demand that those to whom those things are entrusted will continue to recognize the value of what they've been asked to hold on to. And if they mess up, if they make a mistake, if they squander an asset, then don't for a second think that we're not going to be satisfied with the answer that, oh, we forgot what that was and didn't know what to do with it, so we threw it away. Sergeant Quindarius Stanley. He was 23 years old from Columbia, South Carolina. He served with the 3rd Expeditionary Sustainment Command at Fort Bragg. He was said to have been a fine, young leader of troops. He spent 6 months in Brooke Army Medical Center before he finally succumbed to his injuries. Sergeant Stanley and his family don't deserve to be cast aside. He needs to be remembered. And so should the massive debacle of the JLOTS pier, where he and so many others were sent to do a job they had no business being sent to do. Make that make sense. Oh, that's right. You can't. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Well, how's that for a story? Yeah, broke my 3rd grade heart. But I'll tell you right now, when I read the story today about the JLOTS pier and of Sergeant Quindarius Stanley that I had never heard before, even though he died a year ago, I find myself thinking, that should have never been forgotten. Never should have happened, but it never should have been forgotten either. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. I'm saying, just saving the world one soundbite at a time. Got a lot of things going on right now in the world, not the least of which is the fact that we have a brand new pope. I'll talk more of that here in a minute. First, let me tell you this, though. Attorney Stan McDonald. Attorney Stan McDonald is a longtime member of the bar, 30 years practicing law. He's a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee in Huntsville. Stan McDonald is also a longtime conservative warrior, an OG ruffian from days gone by. I mean, he's been around us for a while doing things in the policies and politics that right-side ruffians care about for a while. Anyway, Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He knows how to represent you in any local, state, or federal court. And I like to say, and I say it all the time, that if Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend, and likewise, your enemies would have no greater foe. So here's how you get in touch with him, because you may want a lawyer in North Alabama. He could be your man. Attorney Stan McDonald, the law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man. Here's his phone number, 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. Tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. No representation made. The quality legal source be forms great. The quality legal source for hoop do.
Almost.
All right, so no representation is made that somehow or another Stan's a better lawyer than other lawyers down the street, which I find to be rather, weird and somewhat indifferent, because why would he advertise if he thought he was the worst lawyer? Nonetheless, there's my disclaimer. How you like that?
That almost counteracts the disclaimer, but there you go.
Don't say that. All right, y'all know the deal. I got a bunch of text messages going on. Didn't you have somebody on Facebook too? What was going on there?
Somebody on the YouTube live stream wants wants us to play the camel again today.
Yeah, really?
Yes.
I love the camel. Mike, but we're not going to do it.
It's Thankful Thursday.
Today's Thankful Thursday. We only play the camel once a week on Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. John N. from Huntsville says, oh, wow, it's a long text. He goes, Phil, you know something? He said, you know something, Ranger? Even old fat guys have tear ducts that rise unexpectedly. He said wow. He said today's monologue to an old Vietnam vet guy really came home reminding me of the ways in which so-called leadership of a nation can almost encourage forgetfulness, if not some malignant form of neglect, in the halls of Congress, in the offices within the White House, in the homes of the populace, and in casting aside the pain and sacrifice of warriors and their families. Perhaps we just missed the Biden's visit to Brooke and Sergeant Stanley. But thanks, Phil, for all you do and say. John from Huntsville, that's John N., and who happens to know is with the Elm Foundation, one of our sponsors. And John N., we appreciate you, brother. Thank you for your service. Welcome home. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew. I mean, it goes like from Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border from there. Tonight we get to call once again Fort Benning. And then, oh, by the way, big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. And that's just the radio. That's not including the thousands who stream every single month with us. So thank you very much for your time and attention. We enjoy having this audience. Speaking of which, let me catch up on some text messages. John from Harvest says, Phil, your clock story broke my heart too. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when I would have too. I'd like to have been there. He said, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when your grandfather gave somebody what for. And I remember Biden's peer thinking there truly is no better symbol for the Biden administration. A misguided, overpriced pier sinking in the water. Yeah. And I want to know too, by the way, John from Harvest, I want to know how many of the generals and or admirals who oversaw the various aspects of getting that pier and its parts and its troops over there, how many of them said, Mr. President, this is ill-advised, sir, it won't work because? Or did they just go, yes, sir, 3 bags full, and they just went and did, and then watch what happened? I'd like to know, did anybody push back? I mean, was it purely a bureaucrat making a decision and saying, we're going to do it because, by golly, the auto pen says we have to? Or was there military input received and then rejected? I'd love to know. Jeff from Indiana says, Phil, in this country, we erect monuments to great disasters like the Arizona, the Twin Towers that we never forget. I think it'd be appropriate to erect a monument to the Biden administration and all the harm it's caused this nation, which in my assessment is even greater than World War II and the towers falling, so that we can never forget the harm it caused. And maybe we won't be so foolish next time. Man, brother, what kind of monument what would it look like? Like a giant turd pile.
No, it'd be just a big old auto pen.
A big old auto pen. The giant auto pen.
Yeah.
Just maybe make it so it's actually signing things as it goes.
Or just a big dumpster on fire at the monument.
Dumpster fire, turd pile, something. So you had all the right answers. I said turd pile. It's okay. JT Lacey Springs says, great monologue. Through the night, the attached occurred. However, Doge stepped in and rectified the damage. I've seen this. I've seen this. There was somebody put up a meme, said Cardinals elect a new pope after unexpected 3 a.m. surge in voting.
That's Joe Biden.
I had a friend of mine who texted me earlier, and he says, hey, we have a new pope, and he's American. Does that mean we're going to have hats that say make the Vatican great again?
We need them. I also saw somebody say, with the tariffs now fully in effect, America now is making popes. So,
well, I'll be honest with you. Even this morning, I was actually praying for, because this is a huge deal. It really is. And I'm not Catholic, but I know it's a huge deal. And it has a great influence. And it has an opportunity for great influence for not only the kingdom of God, but for the world of man. And I really do believe that, the right person in that role has an ability to do incredible things. And so what do I know about this guy? I don't know much. I know that he was a American born. He's a U.S. citizen. He has dual citizenship with Peru because he went down there apparently as a missionary and then stayed and became a leader of the Catholic Church in South America. And then he came back home, and of course, he's a cardinal. And then what I'm hearing is a mixed bag. Like Charlie Kirk just texted out or tweeted out a minute ago. He's now called Pope Leo the 14th. He's actually a registered Chicago Republican. Apparently, he's very pro-life, so there's that. But there's some concern that he might be sort of an open borders kind of globalist, and other people wondering, is he even just been installed to help counter Trump? Which, I mean, I would think, hopefully not. But all that to say, I don't know yet. Jury's out. If you know something, tell us. Connor from Huntsville. Hey, Phil, it's Connor from Huntsville. That pier probably shouldn't have even gotten past the the pier shouldn't have gotten even past the engineering assessment. What do you think? Thanks for your show. Thanks, Connor. I appreciate you. Yeah. So listen, my understanding is the J-Lot's floating pier is actually a proven concept, but it depends upon the environment in which you're going to place it. And the Gaza shoreline is extremely turbulent, subjective to weather and everything else. And this was not made for a rough environment. It was also not made to basically be installed in the way it was. And so the whole thing was a debacle. Now, if they were setting up in a calm water area, if they needed some kind of an inland port and they had to restore a harbor, I could see this being a bit, but they didn't. They bellied up to the beach and tried to build it in the waves, and you see where that went.
But even if it did work, it would have just been taken by Hamas.
Yeah, I mean,
So it's like, it was gonna fail either way. It's like somehow they're like, oh well, this aid that we do won't get stolen, even though every other single bit of aid that Gaza has gotten has been stolen by Hamas. Like this one will be different.
yeah, really. I tell you what, while I'm reading a few more text messages before I jump into the Dipper, would you look up, and JLots is JLOTS, would you look up JLots Gaza Pier and see if you can figure out whether we actually recovered the pieces and brought them home or if we just lost them? I'd like to know that. TL from Huntsville says that was a sentimental and amazing monologue, Phil. Thank you, sir. He said the people in the Biden administration seem to have lost their sense of humanity and respect for others. I totally agree. He said something to think about on Thankful Thursday is when a person doesn't have gratitude, this is a quote, when a person doesn't have gratitude, something is missing in his or her humanity. A person can almost be defined by his or her attitude towards gratitude. And that was Elie Wiesel. Wow. He said, and then he said, I'm thankful for Sergeant Quindarius Stanley. Yep, I agree. May he never be forgotten. John from Huntsville says, Phil, fantastic monologue. Also, did you hear that a new pope's been elected? I did. I just talked about it. First American pope ever. That's true. And there were people in the crowd shouting, USA, USA. I did not know that. So that's cool. Mike from Chattanooga is apparently enamored of my voice, thinks I sound sexy. Mike, I'm rather turned off by the fact that you said that, but thank you. But then he says, as terms of remembering heroes, he said, should the 13 heroes of the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle be remembered? Yes, they should. Respect and Remember Foundation. That's an organization at r2factor.org. What'd you find out, dude?
All I'm seeing is that the U.S. military is now dismantling it, so I'm not seeing if that means.
What's the date on that?
This is on the AI overview on Google, so I'm not sure where they pulled that from. I can look.
There should be a link to the side of that says where that sourcing comes from. AI is supposed to not be able to make stuff up; it has to give you a source link. So they say. Jeremy from Madison says, "Bravo, you have outdone yourself again. Great monologue, bravo." Thank you, brother. John C. from Madison says, the doom loop must be Birmingham. Well, John C., you may be onto something. And then Dave from Capshaw is giving me the, I don't know what he's saying here. Basically, he's talking about the Pope, but I'm not sure if there's a joke involved. I can't tell what he's saying. All right, listen, let's jump on in. So I got this segment that I do periodically. Periodically, I'm looking through the news and I'm gathering things up and I'm saying to myself, I say to myself, self, because that's what I call myself when I talk to myself. I say, self, there's a lot of things happening around here in the backyard. Yes, there are. That means I got to do what I call cooking up a whole batch of home fries. Oh, yeah. Cook them up. Do you know I call myself self when I talk to myself?
I mean, it's logical, I guess.
Sometimes things come out of me. I don't know where they come from. That just happened. But anyway, yes, self, that's what I call myself when I talk to myself. Okay, so 1819 News got a story. This is all stuff. All these stories I'm about to run through with you, and I'll cover some with our buddy Scott Buttram when he gets here. But some of these stories are literally from the most recent days in the Alabama legislature, most recent things happening in Tennessee, in surrounding areas. And I got one right here that, you know what? I wish I had been tracking this when it was happening. But I didn't. This one kind of flew under my radar. So now I'm looking after the fact, and it's too late. But Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth, who is also believed to be one of the prime candidates for governor. Anyway, Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth, he lambasted some House lawmakers on Wednesday after the State House Government Committee voted down a bill that would have allowed public school students to participate in off-campus religious and character instruction during school hours. Okay, what's this bill about? Bottom line is, there was a bill in the Alabama legislature. One version in this House, one version in the Senate. They're called companion bills, and they travel in both directions and see which one gets done first. But these two companion bills did the same thing. They allowed for school systems to say, we're going to let our kids, we won't teach religion, but if the local, say Catholic Church is teaching a class on, I don't know, Latin, I don't get whatever, or Bible study, and they can make it accredited in such a way that we can say that's worthy, or maybe there's one in this case for just literally like character building, that they will allow that to be an elective class, and the kids can leave campus for that class and get credit for it as long as there are some safeguards put in place and there's some, documentation and some prior accreditation. What I did not know was this is being done by 12 other states right now. More than 12. More than a dozen other states, said Ainsworth. Said no taxpayer dollars would have been used in this. Identical electives are being offered in more than a dozen other states, serving thousands of students. And legislators allowed paid lobbyists to influence their committee votes on such a simple, common sense bill, they ought to be ashamed. That's his version. He said, whether it be Bible instruction that hones their faith or matters that build their character, he said, I'm going to make sure this legislation is reintroduced again and again and again until the students are given this elective option. That's a wow. And that bill, by the way, that was Republicans and Democrats that killed it. And that happened in committee. It didn't even get to the floor. So it was a 5-5 vote. And so State Representative Chris Sells declared it a failed vote to come out of committee. He's a Republican from Greenville. And then Mike Kirkland, a Republican from Scottsboro. Marilyn Land, she's a nut, Democrat from Huntsville. Russell Bedsole, a Republican from Alabaster. And Marcus Paramore, a Republican from Troy, all voted no. So there's your no votes, 1 Democrat, 4 Republicans. The bill failed. That's something. And by the way, it had good sponsors. It wasn't like this is, and I hate to say it this way, but there are times when the right sponsor can mean all the world to getting a bill through. Because you got to have somebody who has some moxie. You got to have somebody that's got the ability to, enunciate and get their story across. Well, they had 2 conservative rock stars, 2 warriors in there, State Senator Shea Shelnut and Representative Susan DuBose. Both of them made a name for themselves being extremely conservative and good at what they do. And it failed. Let's turn our eyes to the north, shall we? I am thankful that we are watching right now as the illegal immigration issue is being dealt with on a daily basis. Daily basis. So right now, Tennessee Republican leaders are basically saying, good on you. So Tennessee passed a thing in their state legislature just like a month ago, I believe. Signed into law by the governor, Bill Lee. It's called the Centralized Immigration Enforcement Bureau, which basically is a state-level bureau that's currently staffed with 6 or 7 people, and they get grants from local law enforcement and all that to hire officers and then to work with the federal government. And in conjunction with the new Centralized Immigration Enforcement Bureau, get this is cool. You had U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, arrest 84 people in the Nashville area that were illegal aliens in one day. 84 in one day. You know how they did it? They did traffic stops. They literally just checked IDs and things like that, traffic stops. They only did 150 traffic stops. They got 84 arrests. What does that tell you? Either A, they knew where they were.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Or B, there's just a whole lot of them driving.
Yeah. And if they knew where they were, then they obviously have known for a while and not able to do something until now.
Yeah, maybe there are certain roads, I guess, I don't know. But according to ICE, where's my spot here? Here it is. According to ICE, the arrested 84 included 1 alleged member of Tren de Aragua, 1 person convicted for drug possession, with a prior conviction for drug possession, 1 individual with a prior conviction of felony domestic assault, and illicit acts with a minor, and 1 who was alleged having a conviction of reckless aggravated assault. So they had some violent criminals, sex traffickers, drug users, and Tren de Aragua members in the mix. 84 arrests out of 150 stops. Republicans in Tennessee are going, yeah, we love it. But of course, Democrats are calling this ethnically and racially profiling. Well, of course they are. Don't we know? That's how this goes. We got to take a break. We'll come right back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. All right, so I got a couple of text messages and I got a special guest I'll introduce. So John T. from Alabama says, oh no, profiling to find certain people. Imagine that. Yeah, John T. Thank you very much. Jeremy from Madison says, please invite to your show one of the representatives that shot down the school Bible class bill so they can tell us why they made this move. Fair enough. I may just do it. Brian from Decatur says, not sure who else would agree with me, but the primary reason I vote Republican is because their only other option is Democrat. Alabama State, as you know, has a supermajority Republican, but still seem to slow walk most legislation. Yeah, not all, but I will say this. We'll talk about it here with my guest in a moment, but there are things that could have been done that weren't, that's for sure. There are things that were done that shouldn't have, that's for sure. So you look at it, and I got thoughts and opinions. Before I poison the well, let me just go ahead and bring in somebody who goes by the moniker the Secretary of Common Sense on Twitter. My friend Scott Buttram, a publisher of the Trustful Tribune. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here with you. Usually, if I'm here, you're not. So
I know.
This is a nice change.
In fact, what's funny is, but you say that you guest hosted for me, and you and I knew each other by phone before I ever met you.
That's right. That's right.
You had even guest hosted my show before I shook your hand.
We had already become each other's amen corner on social media.
Yes, it's
you
true.
know, everything you posted, I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. And
you doing good?
Yeah, doing good. It was a busy day at the Tribune. Okay. Thursdays are the days we do Tribune Unscripted. That's our live streaming show every week. Award-winning live streaming show. My host gets mad when I don't mention that, but yeah, Tribune Unscripted has actually been named the #1 digital media show by the Alabama Press Association for 6 out of the last 7 years.
This I did not know.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And the one time we did not win first place, Tribune Sports Live, our sports live streaming show, knocked us out of first place one year. But they usually come in second.
Well, as long as it's staying in-house,
that's it. Right. Well, it's kind of hard to live with those guys when they beat you. So I'm glad we put that in the rearview mirror.
Well, man, I'm glad to have you in studio today. That's fun.
I'm happy to be here. We hadn't had a chance to visit in a while. The session is wrapping up. They of course always have that last day on hold, but man, this has just been an uninspiring session, to say the least.
Let me ask you, I get the feeling that this will be the forgotten session. This will be the one that people go, did they meet in 25? I mean, that's the way it feels to me.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, our legislators better hope the voters forget, because I don't think – listen, and Phil, you've sat in that seat in Montgomery. You know how it is. Our voters in Alabama are conservative. They care about what's going on in politics.
Yeah.
But they've got a really bad habit of not paying attention to what the people they vote for actually go and do in session. We're all guilty of it. I went through a period of my life where I didn't watch it that closely. I would say to voters, especially conservative voters, that went out, go to the polls, pick your candidate based on what they have told you they are, who they are, what they stand for. I would encourage everybody to start paying a lot more attention because there's a shift going on right now, in my opinion.
I think there is, and we got about 20 seconds here, so I won't get much of this out. But I also theorize, in my opinion, that they've become a lazy supermajority because they're not being challenged to be who they say they are in their campaign ads. Because the Democrats are nothing burgers right now.
You nailed it.
The Democrats are there to occasionally filibuster and slow things down,
right,
and then pass a bad bill in Birmingham. But for the most part, the Republicans can do what they want to do, which means anything that did or didn't happen is purely on them.
Right. It's all on them.
All right. Music's playing. Preacher got to stop preaching. We'll come right back. I'm going into home fries for a little while with my buddy Scott Buttram, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios, man. We got the local, the state, the national covering down on all the issues. And, oh, yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome back to hour number 2 on a Thankful Thursday. Hey, I don't know if Scott Buttram's heard our Thankful Thursday sound effect. What we doing?
I don't think he has.
Let's do an encore of Thankful Thursday. Hit it.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and the always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you.
Thankful Thursday.
I think I heard an Elvis slid in there somewhere. Did I hear?
There was some good stuff.
Okay, so you got my attention. Anytime you bring Elvis into the room, you got my attention.
And two of those thankful things came from the debacle where Zelensky was in the Oval Office, and they were looking and going, "Have you even said thank you once yet?"
I listen. That rivals Hump Day.
Oh wow, that's
That
saying a
rivals
lot.
Hump Day.
Hey, let me real quick get a text message because it's one I don't want to let get too far down the road without reading it. Jr. from Rogersville. Jr. from Rogersville says, Colonel Williams, I listened to you today when you spoke about the young NCO who was injured building the infamous pier in Gaza and later died from those injuries. It's a heartfelt story. It took me back to my time in Southeast Asia in 1970-71. Have often been told that the U.S. lost that war, but I beg to differ. From what I saw and heard while we were there, the U.S. was not allowed to win that war. All the lives lost for what? Well, so first of all, JR, thank you for your service and welcome home. And then I will just tell you right now, I heard it said once before that, and I've said this multiple times, the men in the boots did not lose the war. It was the men in the suits that did that. The men in the boots won every fight they were in.
That's right.
So, hey, let me jump in here. So I'm cooking up. I gotta every once in a while gather up stories that are more local, stories that are right in our own backyard. We like to call it cooking up a batch of home fries. Oh yeah, want to cook them up. Just cook them up. Smell them. All right, Scotticus. You told me during the break that you disagree with me on some things.
Here we go. Here we go.
I don't usually allow that in my studio. But yeah, so let's talk about a couple things. So one of the things that I get a sense of is this legislative session we just had in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Me being a former state senator, I see it, I get it. I know sometimes there's high profile things. Most folks don't even know that the 50% of what happens. I get that. But this felt like a nothing burger session.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think this session could become known for is what they chose not to do.
You're right.
And one of the things they chose not to do was to give people a continued tax break on overtime pay.
Yep.
And I am not enamored of that decision. I really think they blew it. But you got a few thoughts that I hadn't really considered before. So what is that?
Well, first of all, let me say, you're not going to hear me oppose any tax cut. I'm in favor of all of them.
I know who you are.
Yeah, so
you're the Secretary of Common Sense.
That's right. I mean, I'm in favor of tax cuts as a blanket statement. As tax cuts go, I wasn't crazy about this from the beginning for two reasons.
All right.
One is it affects a very small group of people when you get down to it.
Okay.
And I would prefer to see a tax cut for all working Alabamians.
I get that.
That's right. And I've got a little side concern as well, but it's not primary. So the other major concern I had with this bill is almost out of the gate, we realized that the legislature did not have good background information. They didn't have good numbers
when they passed it.
Right.
Okay.
They did not have good numbers on what this would actually cost, how big the cut would be. You and I were talking about during the break. They were basically off by about 90% from their estimate to what it actually. A lot of people took
advantage of it. They really
did.
Yeah,
they were told, well, it's going to be around $30-something million. It was over $300 million. Why would a legislature vote on anything that they don't fully understand and have full background and information on?
I get that.
And I'm seeing that a lot out of this current legislature.
Here's a couple of questions I have on that, though. Is it because it actually sparked people to become more productive and desire more work? I mean, did it? Because I had Representative Anthony Daniels, the Democrat minority leader
Right.
who actually sponsored the bill, and more than one person texted
Which
my
should have
show.
raised your first red flag.
Well,
it came from a
okay.
Democrat.
All right, but he came on the show, did an amazing job.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
Anthony Daniels. I served with him when I was down there, and as a Democrat goes, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
But I had people even texting in saying, "Are you sure he's a Democrat?" Because he was talking about putting things back in the hands of the people and the working man, and driving people to work and productivity and the glory of work and all. Anyway,
And we know he doesn't believe any of that. But
okay, but this time he did. But that being said, he said he had multiple companies that contacted him and said, I was able to hire more people because they're very interested in the fact that we need overtime and they wanted more work. And some companies told him, we got more contracts because my people were more productive. I could sustain the load. And I was able to put shifts on and that kind of thing. So I just wonder about it. But here's the other piece, the one that really gets me the most, though. First of all, they gave a tax break, then they took it away.
That's right.
But they took it away in a year in which they had a budget surplus.
Yes.
Which means they had a lot of extra money, but they were still freaking out about giving the money back. And that bothers me.
No matter where you or I stand on this bill, the perception is the perception.
Okay.
And this ain't going to be a good one to go back home with.
It's still a turd sandwich, and they
It
ask people
is,
to eat it.
and you got to go back home, and these legislators got to go back home, and they got to face the voters, the ones that paid attention and know what's going on.
Yeah.
From that perspective, I don't think this shines a good light on our supermajority Republican legislature.
Yes, I agree.
And getting back to the overtime issue, again, it just wasn't my favorite bill, my favorite tax cut. You can also easily manipulate a bill like that or a system like that by moving more to overtime where it doesn't get taxed.
Yeah.
We trust employers to turn in correct timesheets. There's a lot of games you could play there.
I see that.
And that's a concern to me. The biggest thing is the vast majority of workers in Alabama get no overtime, so it would never benefit them, never help them. That's my overriding concern.
Do you think it's going to come back to haunt anybody who chose to let it lapse and hope nobody would look?
It's
Legislators, I mean.
there's always that risk. It almost takes, and you were there for the biggest upheaval in Alabama political history.
I helped cause the upheaval.
I'm telling you. I mean, it took 146 years. This state was not run well for the 146 years that Democrats were in control.
Yeah.
It still took 146 years.
Yep.
So upheavals don't come easily. They don't come naturally. They have to be worked. It's very easy to say, I want the guy in office, but you've got to have a viable candidate running against him.
That's true.
And so a lot of things have to come together. Right, with money. I don't know that we're there at this moment, but I think we may be shifting to it. I told Jeff Poore recently, and Jeff asks all the time, when is that next upheaval coming? When is it coming? We talk about that a lot. I'm not sure the upheaval will I am sure it will never be as a result of the Democrats making a comeback. They are gone for our lifetime. They will be insignificant and irrelevant for as long as I'm drawing a breath on this earth.
In the state of Alabama.
In the state of Alabama.
Right.
I'm confident of that. I will also say I think the National Democrats are on the same exact path as Alabama
Their trajectory
Democrats.
is pretty awful right
They're
now.
right on the path of Alabama, so it's going to be pretty wild to watch that. But I do think we will see a Freedom Caucus, a more conservative caucus, rise up within the Republican Party in Alabama. Very much what was going on with the Democrats when y'all knocked them out of Montgomery. They were very divided among liberal and conservative Democrats.
That's true.
You guys just came in at the right time with the right plan.
I'm
telling you,
freight train.
you should be hitting the horn because y'all flat ran them over. Nobody saw it coming except a handful of you guys that
what's
kept
funny?
saying, it's coming, it's coming.
You know what's funny is when we took, we became, and what's a lot of people don't realize is when you get elected to the Alabama legislature, you take office the night of the election.
Right.
Like I'm not sure I even knew that
Right.
until about a week before the election. I thought, my gosh, if I win, I'm an instant senator. Poof, that night.
That night,
And-
boom.
Which meant that
I think y'all voted on an ethics bill the next day, didn't you?
well, we came in about a week later. I didn't know where the bathrooms were in the state
It was
house.
bang, bang.
And then tell the caller we're in the middle of something. We'll have to take that call a little bit later. But the other piece of that is I actually beat one who was considered to be a conservative Democrat,
Right.
and it didn't help him.
No.
So it was a freight train. But I do believe in terms of the next upheaval. Here's a thought on that. I mean, as long as we're chasing this rabbit, I think the next upheaval could be caused by having what I would consider to be a Trump-like figure to rally around in our state politics. If we get, like for instance, if we get, and I said it the other day, I had a monologue I did, I called it, if we get a God-fearing gunslinger to come in as a governor, whether it be Tuberville or somebody else, if we get somebody who sparks the imagination and fires up the base, then the legislature better watch out, because that person will be able to drive the train with their bully pulpit. Right now, ain't nobody standing in the pulpit with Kay Ivey.
No.
At all.
And no matter who our next governor is, they will have a potential 8 years to serve.
That's right.
And right the ship in their way.
And if they come in there, like I said, like a God-fearing gunslinger, ain't no telling what they could do. And I think that would be the thing that might galvanize the Republican Party in the legislative action.
I think
to be more of what they say they are.
I think you're right, and it could trigger it. And Jeff and I, and we all talk, and just so the audience knows, you and I, Jeff Poor, some others have ongoing conversations.
Yeah.
I'm
gripes.
And gripes. we pick at each other and go back and forth, but we're able to vet out a lot of information and get different ideas by doing that. I'm an Ainsworth fan. I literally watched this guy grow during his 2 terms as lieutenant governor. He really is. First time I interviewed him, I thought this is the most clueless person I've ever seen run for state office. I just didn't feel like he had very good grasp of issues. 4 years later, he sat down. We did another interview. I called a mutual friend of his and ours and said, I've never seen anybody grow in 4 years the way I've seen Will Ainsworth grow.
How about that?
He's gone from just trying to figure out what he's doing to top shelf, in my opinion. And I think he had a plan. So
I think that's fair to say, and I think he also has stuck with the plan.
Yeah.
And I've known Will since he was in high school.
Yeah.
I used to be in youth ministry full time, and he was one of the kids I knew back then.
How about that?
Yeah. So.
But I do think Tuberville
no, I don't have any stories that I can use to hurt him.
No, he's genuinely a good guy.
There was that one time with the toilet paper. That was really bad. Hey, we got to take a break, dude.
Yeah.
We'll take a break right now. We'll come right back. Phil Williams in studio with the Secretary of Common Sense, Scott Buttram. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We will be right back.